come. Now, even taking into account that that includes a bit of double counting because some were going to be cut by the government anyway, that is an extremely ambitious plan of the Conservatives, and it's one I think that there'll be arguments over whether it's credible in the coming months.
So where does it leave the spending plans then? Because obviously they're going to have to spend some of these savings, aren't they?
Yeah, I think the interesting figure that we actually got today was not the 35 billion, it's a different figure, it's this one, 12 billion, which is the difference between the Tory spending plans in 2007 and the Labour plans after they have re-spent the money they're promising to save in cutting waste. This is, if you like, the choice between the parties at the next election in their spending plans. Conservatives are going to match Labour on NHS and schools, but they've overall got a 12 billion difference. Now, they can use that for two things. They can use it to cut government borrowing, which is a bit uncomfortably high at the moment, and they can also use it to cut taxes. And tomorrow they'll tell us how big a tax cut they want to make. But if you hate all these billions and graphics and everything, all you really have to remember, Fiona, is the Tories are planning to spend a bit less than Labour, 2% less than Labour, and they're planning to tax a little bit less than Labour too.
OK, Evan, thanks very much. In Indonesia, the country worst hit by the Asian tsunami, another 5,000 bodies have been found this weekend, bringing the official death toll to 115,000 people. But many survivors say that figure will rise considerably in the weeks ahead as more of the devastation is cleared. Large areas of the northern Aceh province were completely flattened. From the city of Banda Aceh, Brian Barron reports.
Every hour, Banda Aceh radio station reads the names of missing people and appeals for information about them. But there's no hope for many, and the body count has risen sharply, 5,000 just this weekend. Latest official estimates are that at least 115,000 people died in the December the 26th tragedy. But this Banda Aceh newspaper chief, who lost 50 staff here, doesn't believe government figures. I've known this coast all my life, he says. I can tell you at least 200,000 have died. It could well be true. This weekend we went by military helicopter past scores of vanished communities. Devastation for 400 miles. In many villages, population records were often vague or out of date. In villages that escaped, the missing are on display. In Banda Aceh, this woman doctor buys newspaper advertising space to appeal for help tracking down her brother and his family.
I hope someday someone say that they find him, find his wife and his son.
3 weeks on, and the scale of destruction here still stuns the senses. An unknown number lie beneath this rubble, but even if their bodies are recovered, they too may never be identified. Brian Barron, BBC News, Banda Aceh, Indonesia.
The Prime Minister Tony Blair and his wife have attended a special mass for the victims of the tsunami at Westminster Cathedral this evening. The Catholic leader in England and Wales, Cardinal Cormac Murphy O'Connor, praised the generosity of the public and called for further action in dealing with poverty. Nelson Mandela has agreed to come to a meeting of the world's richest countries in London next month to appeal for more aid for Africa. The announcement was made by the Chancellor Gordon Brown, who visited Mr Mandela in South Africa this morning. Mark Mardell reports.
The man who's given himself a mission to help Africa travelled to the home of an African hero deep in the former Transkei. They're friends anyway. The warmth was obvious, but the business was deadly serious. Only yesterday, Mr Mandela buried his only remaining son, who died of an AIDS-related disease. Mr Mandela told the truth on a continent where AIDS is often seen as a shameful secret. For Mr Brown, the most moving part of his visit to Africa so far has been meeting these Tanzanian children orphaned by AIDS. This girl, so young, he said, seemed without any hope. But his hope of finding £5 billion more a year to fight the disease is only part of an ambitious plan to inject cash into Africa from the West. The importance of the meeting here between Nelson Mandela and Gordon Brown is that Mr Mandela has agreed to come to London next month to talk to the club of the world's richest nations and try to persuade them to back Mr Brown's plans. Indeed, he's already been on the telephone trying a bit of gentle arm twisting.
The G7 finance ministers will invite him to meet them to talk about all the issues concerning international development that through his whole life President Mandela has been concerned about, but specifically about our proposals for this year to make progress on trade, on debt relief and international development.
It's obvious the sometimes dour Chancellor is filled with enthusiasm, not only by his meeting today, but by his whole visit to this continent. Mark Mardell, BBC News, Kunu in South Africa.
The Palestine Liberation Organization has called for an end to attacks on Israel, saying they harm the Palestinian national interest. Earlier, the Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon ordered the armed forces to take tougher action against Palestinian militants following recent violence in the Gaza Strip. An American soldier accused of leading the abuse of Iraqi detainees at Abu Ghraib prison near Baghdad has been jailed for 10 years. Charles Grainer was also given a dishonorable discharge from the army. He told the military jury in Texas he'd only been following orders. 5 decades after the British hit parade began, the 1000th #1 single has just been announced. Elvis Presley has proved himself once again to be king of the charts, but he's also broken another record, reaching #1 with the lowest ever sales. Here's our arts correspondent, David Silito.
So the king of rock and roll's done it. The 1000th UK #1, Elvis. And one night.
One night with you.
One Night is not only the 1000th #1, it's Elvis's 20th, and music writer John Cutner owns them all, along with every other song to have made the top 20 in the last 52 years, including the first ever #1.
Joe Stafford should be the next one. Al Martino, there it is, Here in My Heart.
That was the first #1.
Very first #1, November 1952.
But the days of songs staying at #1 for weeks have long passed, and sales have crashed.
Songs like YMCA, things like You're the One That I Want, Rivers of Babylon, they were selling millions, well, thousands a week, and eventually went on to sell millions, and there's very few doing it these days.
In the past, an average #1 had to sell around 133,000 singles to reach the top spot. But the figures have been plummeting. Around 22,000 is all you need to sell to hit #1 in today's market.
And there's another big change as well. Most weeks we now have 2 different #1s from 2 very different charts.
10 years ago, vinyl sales were overtaken by CDs, and in the last month, sales in the download chart have outstripped sales in shops.
Younger people obviously buying
downloading
music like Gwen Stefani, they're downloading it. Everyone's got an iPod these days or an MP3 player.
Yeah.
Everyone's connected to the internet. It's there, it's accessible, people can go and get it.
So John is just one of 0.03% of the population to own a copy of One Night, the lowest selling #1 since records began. David Silito, BBC News.
Now with news of another Test century for England batsman Marcus Trescothick and the rest of the day's sport, here's Rob Bonnet.
Thanks, Fiona. Good evening to you. Well, the 4th Test in Johannesburg remains in the balance after England had allowed South Africa to compile a first innings total of 419 and made a faltering start to their reply. Well, Trescothick then came to the rescue with an unbeaten 101. When bad light stopped play, England were 197 for 5. That's a lead of 189 with a day to play.
It was another puzzling morning for England. They tried to restrict South Africa's batsmen, but they didn't succeed. Herschel Gibbs continued where he'd left off, his 161 guiding the hosts to a narrow first innings lead. What England needed now was another Andrew Strauss special, but it lasted only 4 balls.
He's got in.
Strauss out for a duck, and when Robert Key served up yet more catching practice, England were wobbling on 51 for 2. It was now up to Marcus Trescothick to settle any jangling nerves, and he did so in some style.
Scintillating stuff.
With Michael Vaughan continuing his return to form, the pair put on 124 for the 3rd wicket. But just when England seemed to have their noses in front, again South Africa struck back. Vaughan out for 54, and then Graham Thorpe was undone by a stunning piece of athleticism by Jack Callis.
Ouch.
If it left Callis with a headache, it left England with an even greater one, particularly once Flintoff had swished aimlessly at Pollock for just 7. Trescothick, though, continued to flourish. Just before the close, he completed an invaluable century, and with 1 day to go, this match remains intriguingly poised. Andy Swiss, BBC News.
Now football, and there were games today to affect the top and bottom six in the English Premiership, and a late goal gave Fulham a 1-0 win over bottom club West Bromwich Albion, whose difficulties intensify with every match. Meanwhile, Everton stay fourth after a 1-1 draw at Middlesbrough in a game more about European qualification than the Premiership title race.
An Everton Premiership debut for James Beattie in this top six battle at the Riverside. And first blood to Middlesbrough. Everton goalkeeper Richard Wright made up Boudewijn Zenden's mind on what he should do. Alan Stubbs' desperate defence couldn't deny the Dutchman. And with 40 minutes left, the appearance of substitute Duncan Ferguson did it again for Everton. His header set up Tim Cahill for a vital point which keeps them clear in fourth. The bust up near the end showed how high the stakes are in this second tier of the Premiership. Meanwhile, the bottom club West Bromwich Albion were fluffing their lines again on the big stage. Robert Earnshaw should have made the most of Zat Knight's mistake, and there could well have been a debut goal for new partner Kevin Campbell, denied by the excellent Edwin van der Sar. Fulham were the better team after the break, and this 70-yard run by Luis Boa-Morte nearly ended up being a goal of the season candidate. And when Campbell was wide with this deflection, the Baggies manager Brian Robson must have known his team's luck was out. Proof of that came in the 91st minute. Papa Bouba Diop was left completely unmarked to power home a winner, which takes Fulham clear of the bottom four and leaves West Brom a step closer to relegation. Robin Bailey, BBC News.
Celtic, meanwhile, have returned to the top of the Bank of Scotland Premier League with a 1-0 win at Aberdeen. Chris Sutton's first half strike was enough to allow Martin O'Neill's side to overtake Rangers and secure a 3-point lead at the top of the table. Aberdeen remain 20 points off the pace in fourth place. Newcastle Falcons are through to the quarter-finals of Rugby Union's Heineken Cup after beating the Newport Gwent Dragons by 25 points to 17. Matt Burke was named man of the match after scoring 15 of Newcastle's points, culminating in the match-winning try. Newport's defeat means all Welsh interest in the competition has come to an end. But Gloucester are out after their first-ever home defeat in the competition, 27-0 by Stade Francais, who scored 3 first-half tries in the space of 11 minutes, this the second by Stéphane Glass. So Stade Francais are one of 3 French teams to progress to the quarter-finals. Here's the draw in full. Leinster will play Leicester, who were one of the 2 best runners-up after Newport's defeat. All 3 French clubs have home ties. It's Toulouse versus Northampton. The other runner-up, Stade Francais against Newcastle, and Biarritz will play Munster. And those matches will be played across the first weekend in April. That's it, Jenna.
Thanks, Rob. And that's it for now. There are news updates throughout the evening on BBC News 24, and I'll be back with more from the newsroom at 10 o'clock on BBC One. Now it's time to join our news teams across the UK. Bye-bye.
Hello, good evening. Now the main stories from Look North. Police say they're concerned for the safety of a man who's gone missing from his home near Lincoln. Andrew Cooper, who's 34 and from Welton, was last seen on Tuesday and is believed to be depressed over personal problems. He's white, 5 feet 10 inches tall, with dark shaven hair and a ruddy complexion. Investigations are underway into 2 house fires in Lincolnshire. 3 fire engines attended a terraced house at Hemswell Clef near Gainsborough in the early hours of the morning. No one was inside the home at the time of the blaze. And in Grantham, firefighters tackled a fire on Mears Road just before 8 o'clock this morning. The police and the fire service are investigating. A long-awaited memorial to the hundreds of Grimsby fishermen who died at sea has been unveiled today in front of a crowd of hundreds. A 6-year campaign has finally been successful in bringing the tribute to the town, and local people raised over £100,000 to pay for it. The statue will stand in St James's Square, as Warwick Wise now reports.
Over the years, hundreds of men have sailed from Grimsby, never to return, the victims of one of our oldest and most treacherous professions, fishing. Today, hundreds of people gathered by St James's Church for the inauguration of a memorial to all those men who played such a significant part in the town's fortunes.
Grimsby was resurrected in the Victorian days on the back of the fishing industry, and it's of paramount importance to the people of Grimsby that they have something as a focal point now. And as I said, it's a long time coming, but very worthwhile the wait.
The remains of those who die at sea are often never found, and it's hoped the sculpture unveiled today will serve as a focus for those who have lost loved ones to the town's most famous industry.
Yeah, it'll go a long way. It'll be somewhere for people to come and lay flowers or just come and sit and talk to them. As daft as it sounds, I lost my dad at sea, and I still talk to my dad. I go down place in Hull, and I go talk to him. You've got to have somewhere to talk to him and remember him.
The sheer size of the crowds today is one testament to the strength of feeling here in Grimsby. Fishing here is not just a job, it's a part of the cultural heritage. And as the numbers of fishermen still working out of these docks grow fewer and fewer, this monument will stand as a reminder of the trade which built the town, though built it at the cost of many of its sons.
A woman's been taken to hospital with shoulder injuries following a road accident in East Yorkshire. The crash involved one vehicle between Driffield and Nafferton. Firefighters helped free the trapped driver. 20,000 tonnes of rocks are arriving in Withensea this week to reinforce the town's sea defences. The rocks, which are being shipped in from Norway, will be laid along a 200-metre length of the town's seafront to provide properties there with added protection against coastal erosion. The defences will also be extended further to the south of the town. A rebuilt Bronze Age boat has been floated from Hessel foreshore today. The replica half-size ship has been hand-carved from solid oak planks using Bronze Age tools. Remains thought to be from 3 vessels 4,000 years old were found in the Humber last century. Organisers want to raise awareness of the river's importance in maritime history. Full trials with the vessel will begin in the summer.
I thought it went very well. We were lucky with the weather. The wind was up but not too strong. We had some good crew and the boat behaved exceptionally well.
Now finally, let's have a look at the weather for our part of the world. Tonight, first of all, dry at first, but outbreaks of mainly light rain will spread southwards overnight. Minimum temperatures around 6 Celsius, and that is 43 Fahrenheit. Tomorrow, Monday, rain soon clearing, leaving some sunny spells and showers turning heavier in the afternoon. Much colder tomorrow, top temperatures around 9 Celsius. That's 48 Fahrenheit. Just a reminder that your next local news and weather tonight will be on your own.